You ever come home after years gone, fantasizing over that moment, envisioning the reunion 1,000 different times, only to have it all fall apart in your own two hands as soon as you step through the door? Yeah, that was me. 3 years gone. 3 years working abroad. And upon coming home, my wife was expecting. 6 months expecting. And I'd been away for 3 years. I suppose I ought to start at the start, though. Otherwise, it just comes across as one of those cheesy TV shows. And believe me, it wasn't fiction when it was happening. It felt as though my whole chest was caving in upon me. As though someone had pulled out from under me the life I knew I had. My name does not come into it here. I'm just an American small-town boy who felt he was acting responsibly. You know, doing the decent thing. It was 3 years ago, and I was short of money just as was my wife, who we can call Emily. We had bills to pay, dreams we could not afford, and it all felt too tight for us. I had been offered an offer to travel abroad for work. Good money, regular, and plenty of hours such that at last I could put us in order. Emily did not want to hear it initially. Who would? Away from one another for this long of a time. I justified it to her, though. 3 years. Just 3. When it's over, we'll never have to fear anymore. We would have enough at long last to live our dream life. She cried, hugged me, and, finally, replied in the affirmative. That's the day we promised. We would call, we would FaceTime, and distance would not be able to keep us apart. That first year was rough, but okay. We made do, long distance. I'd come home from these arduous shifts, sit on a cot in this dilapidated apartment, and we'd visit. Sometimes for hours, sometimes just 10 minutes before one of us would nod off. She was always exhausted, and I just assumed she was just working extra shifts, too. See, she got this part-time job after I deployed. She said she didn't want to sit at home spinning her thumbs, and I respected it. She wanted to contribute. Yet, over time, those calls became shorter and shorter. Very short indeed. Sometimes I'd call, and she wouldn't pick up. She'd text me afterwards to tell me she fell asleep early. Every once in a while, we'd go 2-3 days without ever having an exchange, just an occasional little miss you, or love you here and there. I just attributed it to life back then. Everyone's exhausted. Schedules become crazy. Now, in hindsight, I can see those little gaps, those little fractures slowly coming through in the foundation of seemingly stable ground I walked on. By my second year, I also started to notice other little things too. When we'd go on FaceTime, she was always vigilant. I mean, she'd position the camera just so. Every once in a while, she'd be outside sitting on the porch instead of in the house as she always did. I confronted her once. She said the house was messy. And perhaps it was, I don't know. I trusted her. I did not want to be responsible for creating problems out of problems. You hear people say distance makes the heart grow fonder? Who came up with this stuff ever had to live for 3 years paycheck to paycheck in a foreign country while his wife built an entire secret second life in his home country? But I didn't know this yet. Back then, I still had this image floating in my mind. Me walking home in one piece with enough cash to save to surprise her, sweep her off her feet, and begin this family we constantly discussed. I can remember counting down the days. I literally kept a calendar marked in red X's. And so, when the day did arrive, when that last shift concluded and I gathered my bags, I was wired. I was like a kid on Christmas morning. I didn't even inform her of the day I'd be home, as I wanted to surprise her. I imagined walking through the door, she dropping whatever she's holding, running to me in arms, both of us tearfully crying in one of those sappy movie scenes. So, instead, I walked in through the door, suitcase in tow, and I will never forget the expression on her face. It wasn't surprise, not of the good sort. It was alarm, as if I had no business to be there. She stood frozen in the kitchen, fingers curled in the counter, face staring. And stomach. Her stomach told the whole story. She was 6 months into pregnancy. I just froze. I did laugh initially, this little, awkward laugh, as my mind was in overdrive, thinking of explanations, and there were none to think of. I even said it to myself out loud. Emily, you're what? She stuttered, placed both hands over her abdomen as if she did something she shouldn't have, because she did, okay? I mean, there's just one way to describe this. She was having a baby, and I did not even touch her for more than 3 years. I was panicky, but I did my best to keep calm. Emily, whose baby do you have here? And she looked me in the eye, steady, but with this strange mix of guilt and desperation, and she said, it's a miracle. A miracle. As if I just got down from the turnip truck yesterday. I wanted to snap, to shout, to insist on knowing the truth, but for some reason, I didn't. Perhaps I was numb. Perhaps I was still grasping at hope. I put my head in my palms and sat down in an armchair, and I felt this hurt disperse through me that words can't quite capture. As if everything I had constructed, everything I had given, had come falling down in one entire afternoon. And then there's this. The worst part wasn't cheating. It wasn't even having the baby. It was gradually coming to comprehend, little by little, as I was overseas forging my future, she had long ago forged another life without me. Because as I moved through one day, the living room, details, little clues, there were things that did not belong to me. A jacket not being mine hung over the door. A mug I had never noticed on the counter. A cell phone charger in the outlet that did not belong to either of ours. I felt dazed by the realization. In my own home, I was the foreigner. And that's where it all began. I don't quite recall sitting there on that couch for how long. Minute? Hour? The perception of time was gone. The suitcase still lay beside the door, dusty, dented, paint chalk marks on the tag from the terminal. And it just sat there, still as if it still had not yet come to terms with it all being different. Emily arrived and sat across me, wringing out her hands as if she was praying. Although she failed to directly meet my gaze. She darted glances in my direction, then back over, as if she was a child expecting the parent's outburst. The funny thing is, I didn't explode. Not then. Whose is it? I asked again, this time in quieter tones. Too quiet. Almost too peaceful, as if I was afraid even my own voice would split me in two. She shivered. Then there came that word, that absurd, amazing word once more. It's a miracle. I chuckled, a harsh, grating sound because it wasn't funny at all. A miracle? Emily, give me a break. I've been gone for 3 years. You're 6 months pregnant. You're expecting me to believe it's some sort of miracle. Her eyes filled up then, and finally she let a few tears roll down. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to break your heart while you were away. You were working so hard. You sacrificed so much. Yeah, I interrupted, and my chest constricted so severely I felt I would shatter. I had sacrificed. I had given up my whole life in order to allow us to live better. And you, I broke down in voice. And you started another one without me. The room was heavy with silence. The hum of the fridge. The very slight tick of the wall clock. That was it. Her tears were quiet, the type to choke themselves down because they know there could not be any sound to make anything better. I wanted to yell, to demand names, details, explanations. But I did not. I could only do, how long? Emily's fingers slowly balled up over her abdomen, protectively. She stared down, unfocused eyes, and sighed. I don't know what to say. That told me everything. She knew it. Oh, she knew it. But she could not tell it in words. Reality was in front of me in my own home. She wasn't just sitting at home waiting for me to come home. She had someone else. Perhaps for months. Perhaps at all hours. Someone substantial. Someone who filled this very home I longed to come home to. I leaned back on that couch, staring at nothing. And inside me, something started to crumble. Not like a wall being smashed, but like sand being drained grain by grain until all that was left was emptiness. I did not sleep that night. The couch I had envisioned sinking into after 3 consecutive years, next to her, at last, stood as this cold void. I carried the blanket to the couch anyway. The house felt to me as it would in a hotel lobby. And that's when the strange details started to gnaw at me. I saw the photographs were altered. The one of us at the fair, at the cotton candy stall, that was removed. A photograph of her and some co-workers I'd never encountered hung in its stead. I also noted couch cushions did not have our previous fabric softener odor. I noticed the dent on the coffee table I didn't recognize. This wasn't betrayal. This was replacement. She wasn't waiting for me. She'd been reordering her world. I was the ghost, drifting back into it as though I didn't own it anymore. The following morning, through the hum of her calmly navigating the kitchen, I woke up and rubbed my fatigued eyes. She placed a plate of eggs in front of me on the table, and for some reason, this just crushed me further. As if she believed breakfast could cover up the void within me. I looked at the grub but did not touch it. So who is he? Her shoulders tensed. She didn't turn around. You owe me that much, I urged. 3 years. 3 years of me working my hands to the bone so you could what? Get over me? Have babies here. I could feel my throat burn from saying it all. At least tell me who he is. Her back still to me, she whispered. It's not that simple. Those words hit me in my chest as if with a hammer. Not that easy. What's that supposed to mean? Either they were there with her or not there at all. There could be no in between. You could not even wait, I said, voice low but razor-edged. 3 years. Just 3 years, Emily. And then, she did turn. Her face was splotched with tears, but she had set jaw, as unforgiving as rock. Do you have any idea how lonely it was? Do you have any idea how many nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if we'd even make it to the end of those 3 years? Do you have any idea how it felt to wake up alone every morning, go to bed every night, alone, while you were on the other side of the world?" Her voice cracked like glass shattering against tile. I stared at her, speechless. Because yes, I knew it was lonely for me too. But I felt like we had made it that choice. Together. I felt like we had both said it would be worth it. That this waiting was proof of something better. "So what?" I said, "Numb now? So you just threw in the towel? And now what, Em? You want me to tally up loneliness as an excuse for this?" I waved at her belly. I made eye contact with two people who once knew me better than I knew myself. Now not quite strangers. Then she relaxed, and she shook her head at me slowly, nearly pitying. "You were away too long." And that hurt worse than anything she could have said. I floated around the house for 1 week as if I was a guest. We didn't communicate much, just as required. She worked. I blankly unpacked. The walls closed in, as if the house knew I could not fit there anymore. Whatever I saw, tiny memories came flooding back and crashed against what I was witnessing today. The swing on the porch where we would sit and have coffee. Now splintered, dusty, neglected. The tiles in the kitchen I helped to select. Now dirty footprints of someone besides me. But the worst detail, the sharpest dagger, came one evening when I went to grab a glass of water. I opened the cabinet, and there it was. A mug. Just an average navy blue mug. But on the bottom, there were engraved initials. Not hers. Not mine. It coursed through me like a truth bomb I wasn't ready for. That mug did not belong to me. It did not belong to her. It belonged to him. Whatever he was, he'd been here. Not only in her heart. Here in my kitchen. Sipping coffee at this table. Sitting in my chair. Taking up the space I had vacant, with himself. I think my knees just failed me as I reached for support on the counter. The mug clattered back in the cabinet. I closed it gently, as I was afraid if I closed it loudly, it would bring down the walls. Emily saw me later. I must have been pale and silent. She asked me if I was all right. And perhaps this was weakness on my part, but I just replied, "Yeah, fine." Because if I said anything at all, anything other than this small, monosyllabic lie, I didn't know what would come out. But in my stomach, a sickness grew heavy and sure. I wasn't going home anymore. I had entered her house. A couple of days had gone by. To most people it would have seemed okay. Two individuals residing under one roof, communicating in dribs and drabs, completing work, having meals. But if you had taken just one little peek, you would have noticed imperfections, how the quiet stretched beyond anything words could have ever covered. I walked most nights. Long walks. Sometimes until midnight. Just to not sit on this couch and be this ghost floating in my own life. The nights it still clung to us, hot air, and cicadas droned in oaks, and I'd walk through these streets by houses lit in soft yellow, and families laughed and screamed in rooms, and it hurt me in some way I have no way to describe it all. It was as if I walked through a museum of other people's lives, and mine had been removed and swapped out without ever once asking me. I attempted to picture how her days must have been without me. Waking another to cook breakfast. Late movies snuggled up together on the couch at home. Whispers in the dark. The reality hurt me in the stomach, biting each time. And the baby, God, the baby complicated everything. Because whenever she placed her hands gently over her stomach, sometimes smiling faintly like she was already in love, I couldn't help but feel this collision of heartbreak and confusion. The baby hadn't asked for this. It wasn't its fault. But looking at her belly was like staring at all my lost time condensed into something I couldn't undo. By the second week, I just could not take it anymore. One evening, I stormed back into the house, hot, exhausted, heart constricted, and I just said it out loud. "I could not remain here, Emily." She looked at me, surprised. She was ironing miniature garments, infants' onesies. Ones I never purchased. She froze and did not utter another syllable. So I continued talking. "This isn't my home anymore. It wasn't in years, was it? As I was away, you moved on." Tears welled in her eyes again, but I wasn't angry this time. I felt empty. The fury had burned itself to a finish through those midnight walks, and there was only an echo sadness remaining. I sat down at the table and rubbed my face in my palms. I spoke in an ugly, raspy voice. "You know it can't be easy? You know. It's not. It's not even the betrayal. It's not the lies or the pretending. It's knowing you became a whole person without me. You built a life, and I don't fit in it anymore." She laid down the clothes, slowly walked over, and sat across from me. At one point, she did not complete the silence. She just waited for me to say something. I envisioned this moment 1,000 times. I gasped. Coming home to you, maybe having our family, finally enjoying the payoff of all those sacrifices. That picture in my head, it prevented me from losing hope. I gulped, pausing to do it once more. Once I walked through that door, it disappeared. It all did. Now I sit here, and I do not even know who you are. They were falling out of control now. "I'm sorry," she whispered. That wasn't enough. But simultaneously, I think it was all she could offer at this point. And that's when it occurred to me. Nothing she could say would make it better. No words could reverse time. They could not erase loneliness, choices, this new life she had made, and my own frozen over 3 years ago. "I do not hate you," I explained after an eternity. "I do not, okay? I just can't sit here and pretend as if this is still my marriage and not say this to you. Not after honesty stared us in our face." She nodded, tearfully, holding her arms around her core as if she were holding in what was remaining of it. And I knew. This was goodbye, even without saying it in words. I packed whatever little I unpacked the next morning. Folded my clothes back into the suitcase which had just made itself at home. It felt surreal, as if I was heading for another long overseas shift, except this time I wasn't heading away for paychecks. I was walking out of one complete life which had walked out on me. Before I could leave, I lingered for an instant at the front door. The door I once daydreamed of bursting through, the door I thought was to everything I loved. Now, it was just a piece of wood between me and what wasn't mine anymore. "Keep yourself healthy," I whispered, "and keep the baby healthy." She nodded once more, speechless, tear-red eyes. And I walked out. I floated aimlessly for weeks after that. I couch-surfed at my brother's for some time, and I would wake up each day feeling disoriented, half expecting to still be abroad, half expecting to be home in Emily's arms. But reality would have to come and put me in my place, rough and bitter. They say heartbreak is like breaking, but to me, it was more like fading. Daily, I faded just a little bit more until I could hardly recognize myself in the mirror. But then, gradually, tiny things slowly started to bring me back. Coffee with my brother on his porch, long talks over the telephone with my mom, who never once criticized me but instead just listened. Hiking trails in the park, crunch under my boots, reminding me I was still here, still breathing. And in one of those still times, I realized an odd kind of strength. You know, this was the truth I came to. Emily did not ruin my life. She changed it, yes. She brought an end to the picture I imagined I was heading for. But life could not simply come to an end, and that helped me to have a choice. I would succumb to bitterness, or I would take back my future. One new one unlike this one. That understanding did not take away the pain. It gave it significance. It did allow raw hurt to be something I could live through without it ripping me asunder. I still think of her at times. I refuse to lie and pretend otherwise. I think of who we used to be prior to all this, and who we could have been if the world had not been so complicated. Yet, as I think of those memories these days, they do not destroy me. They remind me I once loved, that I could do anything I wanted. And though it did not go as I planned, in its time, it was very real. And perhaps one day, I'll love once more. Perhaps not in the same fashion, but in harmony with the individual I've evolved to be. Because the man who left 3 years ago, he's gone. And the man telling you this story tonight, he's still standing, even after the storm. That's what I learned, and I want whoever's reading to know this. When life removes from you the image you've been carrying, it isn't over. It just means it's time to create another one. It hurts. It's impossible. But you'll arrive, grain of sand by grain of sand, until the void begins to become something different. Something yours once more. And that's my story. If you've ever experienced something like this, I'd be interested in hearing your opinions in the comments section. And if this story reached you at least once, put in the likes, subscribe, and activate this bell.